In this episode of Retrieving Sanity, we speak to Julie Barth, author and trauma survivor, but she's author of Notes from a Blackberry. So if you feel like you've been through abuse and you are kind of doubting yourself, you need to listen to the story because you are not alone, you're not crazy, and you can make it to the other side. So thank you for listening. And welcome back to Retrieving Sanity with your podcast host, Keegan, and this is your podcast for all mental health, addiction, recovery issues, and topics. How are you doing today? And thank you for being on the show.
I'm doing well, Keegan. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I'm glad to hear that you're doing well. I'm really glad that you're here, but I'm really sorry that you had to go through that kind of thing, So why don't you tell us all about it? Like, what is Notes from a Blackberry? Like, real quick, did you write it on a Blackberry? Like,
I
is that
did.
how
I
you had
did.
to get through it?
Yeah.
No way.
My first, yeah, I really did. It's funny because a lot of people associate it with political stuff because, it's always that backstory of, someone sending the wrong text message to somebody else. But I used to take my husband down to chemo when we were we were in our 30s, and I had a Blackberry, and he was so sick that when we were there, he didn't want me to move around a lot. So I actually wrote about my daughter, who has special needs. We had just come off of 4 years of traveling around to try and figure out why she was sick, why she wouldn't grow. And then within, 2 years of getting her up and prepared for life and, moving ahead, then he was struck with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. So yeah, it was, but I would write her story, and I wasn't a writer at the time. I subsequently became one, but I would then write it like little snippets and email them back to myself. So I pieced it all together, and it sat on my computer for about 12 years, if not more, just kind of stewing, I guess, waiting to be released.
Oh, wow. Huh. So I really didn't expect it to be from a Blackberry. Like, holy cow. So you actually sat there and essentially took notes, like a little journal of sorts, and pieced everything together. That's really interesting. I haven't heard of someone emailing themselves a book.
Yeah. Well, it was about 16 months. I think he had about 9 months worth of treatment. So we would go down every Tuesday, and I was just coming off of having my daughter, and there was a lot of medical malpractice that led us to go from hospital and surgeries. So I found myself, people would say oh, and when he got sick, we had 4. So we had 2 more children. But when people would ask me about, oh, what about your daughter? I would just grow up on them. Well, and then, and I kind of got to the point where I thought, I got to stop venting to other people and just find a better outlet for remembering it, processing it, getting through it. And so I never really wrote the book to release to the universe, but after reading it over, 12 years later, and just remembering the courage and everything that Tatum and Colin, because it necessarily flowed into his battle as well. So I released it to kind of try and help other people work through the caregiving stages of it, because it's so difficult to be a caregiver and just feel the weight of the world on your shoulders all the time. So that's kind of what the book's about. It really is just his story and her story. And, her story is one of those, anything that could have gone wrong did go wrong with Tatum. It was a comedy of errors without any comedy attached to it. So it's got a lot of twists and turns and ups and downs. And
man. Well, I'm really sorry that it has to have all those downs and turns, because unfortunately that's how life goes. It did turn you into who you are today, and because of that, you help people through some really, really tough spots, and spots that they may feel kind of trapped in. You probably didn't really sit there and go ooh, I'm writing this book to change the world all of a sudden. It was probably just something to kind of keep you on some kind of mental wellness track, right? Something that was more
I think I did it because I knew that my children would never get to know Colin. We had high hopes that he was going to make it, but inevitably I kind of knew. My youngest was 6 months when he was diagnosed, and my oldest was 10. So, my oldest knew of him, but, when you live your life, you could live to be, 100, and all these stories that you have in your head, you really don't ever tell your kids. You just kind of assume that you share them genetically with them. So I think that it really was, just kind of like a revisit of everything that I remembered and cherished about him and his resilience. So I think that's where my focus was. But after that, when I let a couple people read it, just kind of like litmus test, what do you think about this? And most people said, I never knew that you were so sad and lonely. And, it's funny because I never saw myself as sad and lonely. It's funny that they read it and they could see what I couldn't see. And 12 years later, it's now I can look back and say, gosh, I was hiding a lot of it and just trying to like show everyone that I was okay and I didn't need help and I was fine and, don't look over here. And I think as a mother and a caregiver, that's what you do. You just keep pushing it along, and making nice and pretending that everything's fine because you kind of feel like you have to. You have so many people looking to you, but you don't have time to break. It's not the program. So I was hoping that when people read it, they would give themselves the same grace that they give to me when they read it, because I'm sure on the outside, people are probably like, oh, this woman is working so hard, give yourself a break. And I would too. But when you're in it, you just feel like you're letting everybody down.
Yeah, you're hitting some really key points about being a caregiver of any sorts, but not only that, but a mother on top of it, because those are two totally different jobs. You can be a mother without being a caregiver, and you can be a caregiver without being a mother. So being both at once is one heck of a thing. And so I just have to applaud you on being able to actually push through and find a way to thrive, because in a sense, like you said, in the middle of it all, it's just something that feels overwhelming. You feel discombobulated all the time, and you're having to sit there and hold up everyone else's world while yours is essentially falling apart, right? Um,
Yeah. I think you shelf your own feelings. I kind of felt like there wasn't time. There's not time to feel sorry for yourself. There's not time. Everybody always says, this is the thing, right? Like, take some time for yourself. Like, you can't, even if you want to, which you don't want to, because there's so much guilt involved in like saying, I need time. It's just not there. If I was with the kids, then I felt like I was ignoring Colin, who's my husband. If I was with Colin, then I was like, what are the kids up to? So I don't think I made a conscious decision in probably, 4 years. You just go and you do, and it's like putting out fires. It's not like I ever planned. People say, how did you do it? And you don't have a choice. It's not, you don't wake up in the morning, you're like, you know what, I quit. I'm out of here. Pay's not good. I'm leaving. So you just do.
Yeah, you just do. But you did say you put your feelings on the shelf, and I know for myself, I've not really been, well, obviously a mother, but a caregiver. Like I've done roles of it, sort of, but at the same time, not to the point to where it's like I have people depending on me in that same way. So it's really one of those things that, I guess the better way I could put it is, in the leadership positions I've been in, it would feel a lot like a caregiver of sorts, because you have to do a whole lot at once and you feel like there's a whole lot on you. So did you ever feel like you were actually more of a leader? Because the best leader is the one that serves, right? So
Yeah. I think that, I became very good at feeling like I had to control everything, as a leader. As a leader, the best thing you can do is delegate, but I have never been
yeah.
a good delegator. So, people would say, well, what can I do to help? And I'd almost be like, oh my gosh, if I turned loose this little part, then the whole thing was going to fall. I either had to take control of it all, or it felt like the world was spun out of control. So I think as a caregiver, you do that too. Like, there are things that you can delegate, but you're so afraid of letting go of a little piece, because it almost feels like if it's going to be like the thing that cracks the egg and everything falls apart. So I became very
Yeah.
good at, yeah. And in doing it, you immerse yourself into the actions of what you need to do rather than the feelings behind how you're feeling about what you're doing. So,
Ooh.
I wanted to stay busy. I wanted to not have the time. Even if I had the time, I would go running, 10 miles every other day, because the best state to be in was numb. When you don't feel anything, there's nothing to, there's no sadness, there's no lonely. It's just, you're just on autopilot. And it served me really well.
Hmm.
But I think that those things that serve us well at a certain point, if you stick to them and you don't kind of change with things that are changing, then they kind of do you disservice. And I think that's what happened when it led into my second marriage, where
Ooh.
I was so hell bent on like moving forward, getting away from it, not feeling it, not processing. I just wanted to move
Hmm.
and not be me anymore. And unfortunately, I came with me when I moved. So, um, all those things that I was trying to push away and ignore, they're there. And it's like a
Hmm.
band playing all the time. So,
Yeah.
although it's really good for you, resilience wise, to be able to navigate and pivot and do all these things,
Hmm.
ultimately you do have to, there is a price to pay. And that price is just sit with it and, you know, feel it. And I just didn't want to do that. But it does catch
Yeah.
up to you. So eventually you have to.
Yeah, that's for sure. You've definitely got to take care of yourself if you want to take care of others, and sometimes that's a hard lesson that we have to learn the hard way. Um, but it sounds like you found out a really hard way because you said essentially that you didn't leave space for yourself in the second marriage, which essentially told that other person that, hey, this is real estate that is totally up for grabs. Go ahead and do whatever you want to with it. And it's like, well, hey, no, that was my spot. And they're like, you didn't say that was your spot. Is that kind of how that went? Or, so
I
what
think so.
exactly
I think I
happened?
was, yeah, well, I think after when Colin passed away,
Hmm.
that was a time everyone in our world knew us from like grammar school because he was my first kiss and we grew up together and like I didn't even know who
Oh,
I was without him.
oh
Thanks. And
no.
yeah, and so like the whole town was
Mm,
very involved in our lives and our tragedy and just when everybody else was starting to grieve because he passed
mm-hmm.
away, I kind of was like I grieved for 16 months watching a bit of him, pass every day.
Yeah.
So, when he passed, everybody else was just starting and I was done. I was like, I've been doing this for 16 months, like I
Yeah.
just couldn't sit in it anymore. So I think that led
Mm-hmm.
like a little bit too. I had Julie and Colin, my adult life was Julie and Colin, and then there was just Julie. And I didn't have a
Mm,
clue of who Julie was. So I just
yeah.
kind of tried to reinvent somebody who was the
Mm,
opposite of me, someone who wasn't labeled, someone who had freedom, somebody who,
mm-hmm.
is impulsive. And because I've never been impulsive, even when I wasn't allowed to be. So the second
Mm-hmm.
relationship was, he didn't want to know about me. He didn't want to know what I was doing. He didn't,
Uh,
question me about what I was spending or, what I wanted
mm-hmm.
to do with my life. He just was good with, abandoning all responsibilities. And it was such a freeing feeling and,
Hmm.
something I really needed at that point. So, but it was only good for a little bit. And then it was a little bit too much of like, oh wait, he's not teasing. He really doesn't care. I just
Oh
always was
man.
like, oh, I'm sure he cares, but
Mm,
yeah, I gave pretty much everything I had over and with attachment order disorders of losing him, after losing Colin,
mm-hmm.
the minute I would get out of line, he would threaten to leave me, and then I would just fall
Mm,
apart and think, "Oh, I've got to save this relationship." And it really didn't
yeah.
matter what I had to do. Like in my
Mm-hmm.
head, it felt like if I didn't save it, I would die. So it became like
Yeah.
a tunnel vision of trying to save something that was extremely toxic to me and my children, just because it felt like I had to.
Mm. Yeah, and that's something that it's not easy to do whatsoever because you're literally fighting an identity crisis for yourself. You're still maintaining that motherhood aspect, so you're trying to maintain the family identity as well. And you're trying to do a whole lot at once. So of course, like I feel like I would have been backed up into a corner as well. And I like there's not a lot you can do whenever you're in a corner except for do what you can do, and unfortunately
Yeah.
that's not a lot.
Yeah, and
So
I
how
had this vision of what a perfect family would be, and I fell in love with that
mhm.
vision rather than what I was actually living.
Okay. So, uh, and here's like a weird, like side step, not side step, I guess. Like my mother, she always wanted to be a mother, like stay at home mother. Like that was her dream job, that was her essential career. And so for me, I've always been like the adventurous type. And I was like, I don't see how like you could stay at home all the time. But again, that I'm not suited for that. So what does the perfect family look like for you in that regard? What roles were you trying to fill that you were maybe not meant to fill?
I think it was more, a healthy husband, not a special needs daughter. You have children that don't have special needs. And Tatum stuck out
Mm,
like a sore thumb. She still does. She's a little person, so she's 24 and 24 pounds. And it was always just like a big circus to bring her anywhere. You had the suction machine, you
mm,
had the nursing, and so I was always trying to fight this. Like, I didn't ever want to stand out. I wanted to have that family that was just whatever your vision of normal is. Mine was that you have a
mm,
healthy husband, you know, 4 kids, whatever, how many ever kids. And, your biggest thing is going to baseball on Saturday mornings, and you do
mm.
football on Sunday, and, you have family dinners. And I just wanted a traditional family. And it just seemed like I couldn't ever get to the point, it was more like one thing after another that tore me away from that normalcy that I craved so much in my life. Like, I just
Mhm,
wanted everybody to think everything in our world was perfect. And the
mm.
worse it got, the harder I tried to pretend it was perfect. So, yeah, I think it was a lot of years of acting, of just being
Mm,
like, everything's fine. Don't look over here. He's
mhm.
not sick. She's totally okay. It was almost like the house was on fire. And I was like, no, it's not. My house isn't on fire. Um, so it was a lot of bouncing and pretending and just trying to ignore what was right in front of me. And in the second
Mm,
marriage, especially, like, he was doing all sorts of things that your mind can't really comprehend, cheating on
mm,
me, stealing from me, lying to me. And I just kept
mm,
thinking, oh, it's me. Like, there's no way someone would steal my engagement ring and have a fake one. Just things that you'd think, I'm making this up in my head. There's no way that anyone that I love would do something like that.
mm.
So it was
Uh-uh.
a lot of years pretending that wasn't happening either. So
No, that sucks. That really sucks. Um,
it did.
like, can I ask on that personal like level, did the second marriage involve like addiction and stuff, like alcohol or substance abuse, or was that just part of their game?
Yes.
Mm, yeah.
I think, well, I think that a lot of the mental illness going on was covered up by alcohol, and I think there was extreme lack of self-esteem, and
Mm-hmm.
let's just say, and we both had a lot of issues at the time. I'm struggling with
Yeah.
all the caregiver's guilt, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was a very tumultuous time for both of us. And I think that's what kind of kept me stuck there, because I kept thinking, well, maybe it's just because we're both so stressed, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
I am broken. Maybe because where I had never, you say never, I had never had an argument with my first husband that couldn't be
Mm-hmm.
resolved. Like, I
Yeah.
could never imagine with my second, like, I couldn't resolve anything. Like, if I would say the
Mm,
sky was blue, or if he would, I'd have to check it 20 times, and he kept telling me it was purple, and I'd be like, but it's blue. So
mm,
there was just so much confusion that,
mm-hmm.
yeah, it was very hard to navigate, on top of yeah, substance abuse and a lot of drinking and all those
Yeah.
things that, make all of any mental issues that you're dealing with, are just made worse when you self-medicate.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. I
Yeah.
only really asked because I was like, I come from that same background, and like that sounds like something that anyone in the right mind would be like, no, that is really stupid. Why would I do that? But in the moment, whenever you need to find your fix and however you're going to get it, you're going to come up with some really ingenious ways to be like, oh yeah, that it's like out of a freaking comic book sometimes, with how silly those kind of scenarios could be. But that's the
Yeah.
thing, is that with it being so silly and out there, that it does sit there and almost gaslight you into thinking like, no, that can't be real. That's too extravagant. Like,
Right.
that is way too much. Like, why would someone go through
Right.
that much trouble just to hurt me? You know?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And, I do have a writer's mind. I'm a writer. So I did find myself
Mm.
being like, you've been watching too much Dateline, Julie. Or like, what is that dirty? There's the not Dirty Harry, whatever that movie is. I think I do. I kept
Uh-huh.
thinking, but my life has kind of been like that, like, special needs
Mm.
daughter. And then when I moved away from home, my special needs daughter ended up getting cancer,
Mm.
which was completely unrelated to everything that she had grown up with. So, I was just worn out on reality, because my
Mm-hmm.
reality had been so unreal to begin with that it was just one more thing where I was, thinking, oh, there's no way that that's going on, take it down a notch, Julie. You're being a little dramatic. Um, but I was talking to someone else on a different show, and I was telling my story. And as I'm telling, like, I say like, oh, and then her face just kept like melting. And, from the outside, I can see where people would be like, so then you decide to have another child? Okay. And it's just that you get caught up and swept up in a moment, and you do things that
Mm-hmm.
you would never see yourself doing. And then when you do them, you think, why did I do that? So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's kind of a crazy cycle, literally, a
Yeah.
cycle that keeps you in this perpetual state of confusion.
Mm-hmm. And that's a really good way to put it too. A perpetual state of confusion, because whenever we're in the thralls of whatever may be ailing us, there's usually not a good way out. We kind of have to stumble and find our way. And I know that whenever stuff starts to become more like lucid, I guess, looking back at things, our perspective will shift so much that sometimes we turn into our own worst enemy at the same time. So whenever you started to actually see what was going on, and especially like in second marriage, did you start throwing guilt on yourself? Like, oh no, this wouldn't have happened if I did this, or this is my fault because of this, or did you have that unnecessary guilt thrown onto yourself by yourself?
I did, he was very brutal to my children.
Mm,
Yeah, there was a lot of, because I do define myself as mother first. And,
mm,
to look back and recognize that I made all sorts of excuses for his behavior and dismiss my
mm,
children's feelings about it. I
mm,
think that's a heavy guilt that I carry. And, the fact that I just kind of picked up and left everyone. I left my family. I left my first husband's family, and just took my kids to the middle of nowhere. Um,
mm,
but, to anybody who's feeling that way, I try to stick with the mantra that, it's so easy to look back on something and say, well, that was done. But you make
mm,
decisions that you make with the information that's presented to you. And I try to,
mm,
tell people and tell myself that if you did it for the right reasons, regardless of what happened, what comes from that decision, you can't blame yourself for, if you had a good intention in doing it and you had
mm.
goodness in your heart, then no matter what happens, you can't, second guess it. Everything happens for a reason. As much as I hate that phrase, I believe in it deeply. I wish that wasn't the
Mm-hmm.
case, because it's not always a good reason, but
Yeah.
um, yeah. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think people that go through stuff, we're meant to soften it for the next people that come along. So, I kind
Mm.
of take that part to heart too.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at that. I've never really thought about it. And you kind of not only blaze the trail, you help soften it. You set the landmarks, the milestones of like saying, "Hey, this is a good spot to like reevaluate everything and all that." And you're also right that I think that there's no one intentionally makes a mistake if they're in their righter mind. No one will sit there and go, yeah, that is the option that will absolutely screw me and everyone else over. I'm going with it.
Right.
No one
This
sits
one's
there
going
and
to
says
cost
that.
me. I'm taking that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no one sits there and does that. If anyone does that, that is like the very different. I'd say that is insanity. Not sitting there going like trying the same thing over and over and over, but tweaking it a little bit. That's fine. But if you sit there and go, no, I'm going to the option that absolutely just burns everything to the ground, yeah, that is dumb. But no one does that, and that's not something that you would do either, because like you said, in the middle of it, everything, and you said it before too, is that you needed that relationship, you needed those aspects of it, but after a point they didn't serve you anymore too, but you're already
Yeah.
so deep into it that it's hard to get yourself out. So how'd you
And
do it?
I think that's what, well, I think that's what keeps you stuck too, is that, when first of all, you don't want anyone to know what's going on in your home. And then
Yeah.
when you tell people, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm so stupid. I'm so stupid. And if you
Mm-hmm.
expose somebody else, you kind of have to expose yourself, like
Yeah.
relationships don't happen in a bubble. It's not that I was this saint with, that carried around angel wings all the time. I did things that I wasn't proud of. I,
Mm-hmm.
behaved in ways that I would suggest nobody else does.
Yeah.
Um, but you're so in it and you can't see a way out of it. I really do think that, the reason I finally got out of it was because my son came to me, who it's, my husband picked on people, but he definitely picked on one of my
Mm-hmm.
sons. And he came to me and he
Oh.
said, I don't know why you keep letting him come back. Like, he's ruined my childhood. I've been afraid of him since I was a kid, and in that moment,
Mm.
I recognized that it didn't matter. If I couldn't get out of it for myself or care enough about me, then if I want to say that I'm
Mm.
this mom, then I have to be that mom. And that's kind of
Mm.
when it was over. I just couldn't do it anymore for them. I probably could have done it for, been in that position forever, letting him, pound me down, because at a certain point you just stop caring or feeling. But when you look around, see
Yeah.
all the carnage of everything else that's touched, that's when you really have
Mm-hmm.
to reconcile and get out.
Yeah. Oh man. So essentially, Mama Bear came to the rescue, right? Mama Bear instincts.
I hope so. Yeah, they did. And again, I think that you don't know why you do things. I think, at the
Mm-hmm.
time, when we were getting separated, I had two very small children, and I kind of
Mm-hmm.
always knew that he would come for them, and I knew that they wouldn't be able to talk or like stick up for themselves or make decisions for themselves. So I kind of felt like I was
Mm-hmm.
buying time too. Um, and I
Mm.
don't think I recognized that until I was on the other side of it. But that's what it takes.
Yeah.
It takes getting on the other side of something to really make sense of everything that you did and everything that went on in it. Because
Mm-hmm.
you know, it all follows a path that you can't see. And you get so hung up in worrying about losing things. But I always say to people is, if you're afraid of losing something, then you'd be happy. You wouldn't worry about losing it because you'd know it was yours. I think it's those
Ooh.
things that really don't belong to us that we're so afraid of losing, whether that's friends who are not really your friends or family that isn't behaving like family. Whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is you're afraid to lose, you don't need, because you don't really have it, or you wouldn't be afraid of losing it.
Hmm. Wow. I haven't really heard about it. I haven't heard it put in that sense before, because normally if someone is trying to hold on to something, a lot of the times it's because, yeah, they're afraid of losing it. But yeah, that's going to have to make me rethink some things. I like that. Interesting. Thank you for that.
Sure. It took me a long time to get there too. But yeah, I mean, I just think, and, I'm older now. And when I
Hmm.
have a friend who's a true friend, I used to worry so much about like how they saw me, or what, how, if they were mad at me, and then I came
Hmm.
to find out that, those people that really do love you and are in your life, if they're upset with you, they're going to come and tell you and give you the opportunity to defend yourself or talk about it.
Yeah.
And if they don't, then you're not really as close to friends to them, and you really don't have that relationship with them that you want, or that you think you
Hmm.
do. If you feel like it's so fragile that they're just going to get up and leave you.
Hmm.
And it's true. The people that were fragile in my life, friendships that I thought were very deeply rooted, but were
Hmm.
clearly fragile. I lost them, and it's sad, but
Mm.
like I said, I don't know that I had them to begin with, to a certain extent.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of like you're sitting there building a whole like bunch of different houses of cards, and if you move wrong, then they just topple over. Yeah, that's not really a friendship or a relationship of any sorts that I could say I would feel confident in having around. But it does seem like those are the ones that like we seem to take pride in, maybe, and that's why we don't want to lose them. Huh.
Yeah.
Hmm. So, whenever you started to actually unravel everything, though, I mean, you're sitting there and you're in the middle of all of it. How did you get everything sorted out in the most neutral or positive way that you could have,
Well,
for yourself and for your
unfortunately, he
kids?
didn't allow me to.
Mm.
He had sought a counselor 2 years before he even said anything about getting divorced. That I didn't know
Hmm.
about until I went to hire that lawyer, and they were like, "Oh no, your husband came in 2 years ago." He was
What?
really, yeah, yeah.
Huh.
I mean, he set me up in several stages, so I was forced to defend
Hmm.
myself and my character, and it was hard. But I will say that. Um, it really opened my eyes to who
Hmm.
I really was, because
Yeah.
for a while, you begin to believe what somebody tells you. So when he
Hmm.
came for me and I had to like stick up for myself and say, I've done A, B, and C, it's really the first time that I recognized that I was raising all these kids on my own. So
Hmm.
fighting for myself gave me a certain level of confidence that I don't know I had before that. I think,
Hmm.
yeah, anger and not so much anger, but just fear and trying to protect your children brings
Hmm.
out a part of you that you don't even know is there. You have so much strength that just kind of shows up for you. And that's
Hmm.
what I found is when I thought that was nothing and I had nothing and I was going to lose it all was the very point. It was the pivoting point when I decided, no, I'm going to be okay. I mean, I might lose it all, but that just
Uh-huh.
means that I get to rebuild and be the person I want to be rather than this person who's staying because they're so afraid of losing everything.
Mm. Yeah, and so you essentially had to take that leap of faith within your own head and heart, right? And that is scary. Ooh.
Yeah, it is.
Um.
That saying, the devil because the unknown is so scary. I always say, but it's still the devil. Like there's got to be something
Mm.
better than that. And I think, yeah, staying in something that's predictable really just means that it's predictably crappy. Like there's got to be
Yeah.
something better out there. Yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And it is scary to do anything that's new, but if you're not happy and you know that something's toxic to you, um, my very worst day today is 10 times better than my very best day for a decade. And,
Mm-hmm.
it takes that belief in um, yourself and that you could rebuild and that there's got to be something better for you than to be miserable and sad all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a beautiful way to look at it too. And you actually were able to sit there and find your voice for yourself. You were able to self-advocate and you were able to just really plant your flag into that real estate and say, "Nope, this is mine. So it's been mine. Get out of here." Like you crossed a fence way long ago and I just let you stay here. Why? I don't know, but you're out now.
Yeah, it was
And
kind of nice. Like when the papers were all signed to just sit on my front porch and be like, it's my house now, because it was never my house. It was always like, oh, what do you want to do? What decision? And,
mhm.
it's nice when you get to make your own decisions and not worry about what someone else is going to think or say or sabotage. That's a
Mhm.
pretty amazing and freeing feeling.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Especially after you've had to worry about the safety of your children and everything on top of that, right? Because that would have been one of those other things, like the fear of losing the stability or whatever is a huge fear for literally everyone whenever it comes to doing anything that might progress their lives or their situation, anything, because it's the whole, well, this is the possibility of it going well, but if it doesn't go well, it's not good, and that will keep a lot of
Right.
people there. So did you
Yeah,
face that kind of fear
definitely.
too?
I did. Our court systems are. I'm not a politically motivated person,
Mhm.
but our court systems are pretty messed up when it comes to divorce. And unfortunately, in any other sort of court scenario, you're innocent until proven guilty. But unfortunately, in family court,
Mm-hmm.
you are guilty until you prove that you're not. And it was
Mm-hmm.
it was a hard fought war to, prove that I was not what he was saying, ironically, which was everything he was putting on to me. But it is a very difficult feeling when your children are not your own. They came in
Mm-hmm.
and suddenly I couldn't make decisions for my children. It was almost as if they weren't mine anymore. I had to take them to counseling when they said I had to take them to counseling. I had to
Mm-hmm.
turn them over to somebody who I knew was dangerous, somebody who was drinking and driving. And I knew that and I could prove it, but it wasn't enough. They kept
Mm-hmm.
saying, oh, well, that's not enough. And I thought, well, when is it going to be enough? Because when it's enough, it's going to be too far. And I think a lot of that happens,
Mm-hmm.
the courts are so into keeping parents with their kids. And I get that. And I think it's a great, great thing, but not when the other parent is
Mm-hmm.
toxic or manipulative. And unfortunately, proving that is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think I went into it saying, oh, everyone's going to see what I see, but it's not the case,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Nope.
very hard. You've got two people telling two very, very different versions of the truth. And even though my
Mm-hmm.
children were saying that, what I was saying was real, um, they
Mm-hmm.
went and talked to my kids, and everything I had to say, they backed up. It was a more than almost 3-year battle to make sure my kids were safe. And, when you know that you are no longer able to keep your kids safe in your own, in your care, it's a
Uh-huh.
very scary feeling.
Yeah, because you're essentially failing the whole role of caregiver, right? If they're
Yes.
in any sorts of danger, then that is, you are the first line of defense, you are the foundation, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's a really scary feeling. And
Yeah.
2 to 3 years to fight for that kind of stuff. It sounds like he was, like you said before, he kind of set you up a little bit earlier. So there was definitely some manipulation going on, some pre-planned stuff, and
Oh, yeah.
it is really hard to like get around that too, because it's like some people would sit there and be like, well, if you had ideas that this was going on or anything, why didn't you speak up sooner, or this, that, and another? And
Yeah.
it's like, well, hey, I totally would have. If do you think I'd still be here?
Yeah. And, I always just tried to make nice. So,
mm,
when we didn't do a whole lot of fighting in person. I was
mm,
afraid of him anyway, but it was a lot of text fighting. And he would
mm.
save all the text messages and he was sending them to his friends and like, oh, look at what she's saying now, and videotaping me. And, um, I didn't
Eesh.
save anything. Yeah. I
Mm,
purposely would, after our argument, I would erase everything because I was like, I don't even want to read through that. That's just so ugly and toxic. I don't want to remember it. I
mm,
just want to put it behind me. And
yeah.
yeah, so for about a year and a half, he was doing everything he could to set me up, to prove that I, was crazy or whatever, whatever it was,
Mm,
that he was accusing me of. So when push came to shove, he had all this documentation. Like he had text messages from like 5 years earlier, and of course, I had
damn.
nothing to defend myself because
Mm,
in my heart, I wanted it to work, so
mm,
I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to acknowledge it. I certainly wasn't going to hold on to it because it was something I was trying to
mm,
forget. And the whole time he was, setting the stage to, make me look crazy. And I can't say that he did a really good job. And as an outsider, I
oh
might have
man.
said, wow, what she said in that text message, wow, that's, but they didn't see the 3
Mm,
conversations before it that led to that moment.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like people cherry picking verses out of certain books and saying, "Oh, look, it means this exactly and only that." And it's like, no, you need to include the context of the other verses before and after. Where's the whole situation going on? Like, it really involves a whole lot of backstory that a lot of people just sit there and say, "Well, I'm here presenting this information, so you should be able to take it at face value." Right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
and I think
whenever,
the average person, yeah, couldn't imagine that anyone would be that dumb, like,
Mhm.
so, we're living in North Carolina and our marriage is falling apart. I've got 2 more kids. Now I've got 6. And so what do? I
Mm-hmm.
decide to move closer to his parents and away from it. It was just like, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
could see where from the outside, people would be like, oh, so it wasn't going badly enough. You had to make another decision to go down that road. And, um, it's something you have to admit, like, yeah, that was really dumb. But there
Mm-hmm.
was a design to it that you didn't see behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's really, I always say, there's only one word to change someone from the hero to a villain, and it's really easy to change that one word if you put it in the right context. So
Mm. What is that?
um well, you could both be the hero or the villain depending on how someone is telling the backstory of it.
Mm.
That's kind of how I see it. I just mean that someone can take a hero and make them look like the villain pretty
Yeah.
easily by
Yeah.
picking and choosing what they want to put in there. So
Yeah, it's essentially the same side of the coin, right? And we can look at it in the one of my favorite like Disney films is the first Maleficent one, because in the early cartoon ones it's like Maleficent is this bad person, blah 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 blah. But then you go and you actually learn like their backstory, and it's like, oh wait, no, they're not a bad person. They were actually doing it all on this
pushed into
account.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's the same kind of thing, and it really depends on whose side are you going to listen to. And then you even said before earlier that he was presenting different versions of the truth, and that's the thing, is that there's your side, their side, and then the objective side, which is really hard to prove a point, especially whenever you have a manipulative planner that's been sitting here holding on to information for years. Like, that tells me that they were either insecure enough that they were scared of it happening in the first place, so they were always afraid of losing you too, which is kind of weird, right? Like, they kind of did that self-fulfilling prophecy. Everything that they
Yeah.
didn't
And I
want to
think
have
there might
happen
be
happened.
yeah. Yeah, and my mother used to say that all the time. She would just be like, "Oh, I just think he's so afraid of losing you." And I was on the other side saying, I can't see it because I've done everything in the world to be
Hmm.
here, to show up, but I guess we
But
all have our insecurities that we play off of. So
yeah, and that's the thing too, right? Like, I'm only able to maybe guess that because that's the only way that I can see someone not acting in a malicious intent, is acting out of those insecurities. And I'm trying to paint someone not being a bad person, but that person may just be a bad person.
yeah,
So,
but I'm like you. And I think that's why I tend to get stuck in situations like I did, is because that I am like naive enough to think that everybody is born good and that we all just hit certain things in our lives and role models and the nature versus nurture. I am a huge nurture person
mm,
over nature. It's not that I don't think
mm,
nature isn't important, but we all come in this world as a being that I think is, manipulated, handled, nurtured, or whatever, that we come to the table with these experiences, and that's the way that we view the
mm,
world. And
yep,
so, yeah, I agree with you. I think that sometimes we villainize people who are mentally ill or, have, substance issues. And perhaps if he didn't, then maybe he wouldn't have been seen. Maybe he saw the world the way that he really was presenting it. Maybe that was his reality too. So he
mm,
might have been fighting me. And that doesn't
yeah.
get me anywhere because that's why I stayed stuck for as long as I did. But
Mm,
I have a hard time, believing that people are inherently bad. I think people do
mm,
bad things. And I think
yeah.
sometimes they do them out of fear, or you just don't ever know what's motivating somebody. You can assume, but it doesn't
Mm.
make it correct. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And that's the thing. You said you think you're naive enough to believe that people are just inherently good. I don't think that that's being naive, because I'm in that same boat. Like, I believe people are inherently good. And whenever I was in rehab, we had someone that was trying to tell us that no, people are inherently bad, and here's why. And they like to use the whole example of, if a kid gets cookies from a cookie jar and like you ask them if they ate it and they have crumbs on their face, they'll tell you no, right? And I was like, well, it depends, right? Because if they say no, I didn't do that, and they're lying to the parent, it's because the kid has been taught to be afraid of consequences. Otherwise, they're going to be like, yeah, I totally ate that. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was delicious.
Yeah, but if they
Yeah.
learn to fear consequences, if they fear retaliation or anything like that, then that's whenever they learn to start self-guarding themselves, to start doing these weird kind of things. So I don't think people are inherently bad. I just think that we get really messed up early on, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And, I think not all of us are lucky enough to have, parents that are equipped to be
mhm,
parents. Um,
yeah.
there's no, you don't need to try out for parenthood. You don't even need a license. So, and I think as parents, we do, we do the best we can, but I'm
Mhm.
sure I've done things. I'm sure, get my kids together in a room and and they could probably tell you some stories. But yeah, I think we all do the best that we can. Hopefully, I like to believe that we do the best that we can
Mhm.
until we feel threatened. And then we do certain things to try and protect ourselves or our children. And that, I think that's where a lot of ugliness comes in, especially in a divorce situation. You're
Mhm.
not really fighting for yourself. Well, unless you don't have children. But I think a lot of people that are in custody battles, they really do believe that they're the best parent and they can provide the
Mhm.
best. At least I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so too. I hope that if anyone is sitting there trying to take custody of children, it's for the actual betterment and not for out of spite. Like, oh, you hurt me, so I'm going to take the kids, and of course that
I think a lot
situation
of
does
that goes
happen,
on though.
unfortunately.
Yeah. But I think
Hmm.
that those people, the thing about being in a custody battle was that he didn't even want to see them. So he was fighting for time that he never
Mm.
lost, and he was fighting for things that he had. So the motives behind
Mm.
it were kind of questionable.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, whenever you put it like that. Yeah, never mind.
But,
um
they tend to disappear anyway. So there's that.
Yeah. Real quick, where can people find you and your book? And it's at juliebarthauthor.net, correct? Did I get that right?
Yeah. I think it's net and con. I have both of them. I don't know it, but
Ooh,
if you go there,
okay.
there's also a tab for the charity that I started, the CJB Outreach, and there's
Mm-hmm.
also a tab for my daughter's art. She does artwork, and all the
Ooh,
proceeds go to fund the charity. So they're all in one place, and my books and podcast appearance are there. And I have another book coming out hopefully later this fall. So um,
oh,
it's kind of exciting,
nice.
but yeah.
Is this one going to be titled Notes from a Mac?
No, it's gonna be it's already written. It's from blackberries to thorns. So I'm playing off the
Oh.
blackberries versus the technology. So yeah,
Fair enough.
but it would be Mac. I
I
am a
like
Mac
that.
person, so yeah, it's not gonna be Android. So it's not gonna be
I,
notes from an
I don't
Android.
know why. I don't know how I guessed that, but I was like, I feel like you're a Mac user. um,
Well, I'm older, so I think
um,
we all are.
yeah, fair enough. I'm not here to argue in any shape or form, especially in that. But real quick, this has been a super fun conversation. I know we've dug some deep wounds and stuff like that, so thank you for your vulnerability and honesty and all that, just because it does pave the way for other people that may find themselves in similar situations and being like, there's not a way out. And there actually is, right? So thank you for just showing up, because it does take a lot of strength. It does take a lot of rebuilding yourself to even get to the point of wanting to share your story in such a way like this. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, yeah, thank you.
Of course. But we have come to the time for a quick little game show segment if you're ready to play just a little bit.
Think so. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So everyone, today's game show segment, we are calling it Power Moves or Pressure Points. So I'm going to read out just a couple of scenarios. They can be real life, hypothetical, whatever. Pull from imagination land. And we're going to ask Julie about them and ask if it's a power move, something that is healthy, empowering behavior, or a pressure point, something that is manipulation, subtle abuse, or a warning sign, also known as a red flag. So, I've got a couple of them ready. Are you ready, Julie?
Yeah.
All right. So, the first prompt is, he says, I'll handle the finances. It's just easier that way. Is that a power move
Pressure
or
point.
pressure point?
Pressure point. Yeah. Yeah.
So definitely be aware of someone trying to handle all the finances. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't need an allowance. You're not a child.
Ooh. All right. Next up, she's encouraged to stay strong and keep it together for the kids, even when she's falling apart on the inside.
I think it's a power move.
You think that that's a power move?
I do. I do.
Okay.
You have to find that power inside yourself. It's you falling apart is just going to make it all worse. So yeah, I think there's a time and a place to pick yourself back up, but you just got to push through it. So yes, I think it's a
Mm,
power move.
okay. Thank you. All right. Next up, they constantly say, "You're lucky to have me," even after belittling you or blaming you.
Pressure point.
Pressure point.
Yeah.
Hard to hear sometimes, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
All right. Let's see. Next up, your grief is met with silence, discomfort, or the phrase, "You should be over it by now."
Pressure point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one would definitely put me in a corner that I would say, no thanks. You can go after yourself.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of people that'll treat people in grief that way. Nobody likes to be uncomfortable, so they almost
Hmm.
like want you to shut up. So, and I
Yep.
don't know that they do it on purpose, but people will avoid uncomfortable situations like the plague, and then you just decide that nobody wants to hear it. So,
Yep. My therapist told me that it's because the people that are uncomfortable seeing me act a certain way or feel a certain way is because they're uncomfortable feeling that way themselves. So,
correct.
whenever
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that makes me feel different. I don't know how, but all
Yeah,
right.
because it's not your fault. You can't take blame for the way someone else feels.
No, yeah, you really can't. Um, but moving on, we'll make this the last one for the moment. Someone offers to help, and you feel guilty for saying yes.
Probably pressure point. That's on
Mm,
you. If somebody offers their help, then you should feel good about it. You know what? When people help you, they feel good about it. People want to help because
mm,
it makes them feel good on the inside too. So, yeah, I mean, there's no sense in feeling guilty if somebody does something for you. Then just don't let them or don't feel sorry for it. So, can't have it both
yeah.
ways. Yeah.
So it's okay to delegate a little bit whenever you are playing caregiver.
Yes. Please do. Please do. You drive yourself crazy if you don't.
All right. Well, thank you for playing our game Power Moves or Pressure Points. And I have gotten a title for you. You have earned the title The Lighthouse in the Storm for Retrieving Sanity because you are a symbol of unwavering strength and a guide for women navigating their darkest hours. So thank you for playing and thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I
Um,
enjoyed the conversation.
of Of course. We're not quite done yet because I got one more question. Julie, the name of this podcast is Retrieving Sanity, and we explore how all facets of living life impact mental health. Looking at the incredible motley adventures of your life, what does retrieving sanity personally mean to you today, and what's one practice or perspective that you believe is crucial for anyone on that journey?
Um, I think that the most important thing that helped me regain my sanity was to stop worrying about what other people think. It
Mm,
doesn't matter how people feel about you. If you wake up every morning, look in the mirror and know that you're doing your best, you're being the best version of yourself, then you're not responsible. Back to the whole, you're not responsible for anyone's feelings about you besides yourself. So I think it can keep you stuck because to keep worrying how people are going to respond or what they're going to think or what they're going to say, it doesn't really matter. You have one life to live, and the only person you're responsible to make happy is yourself, and no one else
mm.
can do that for you. So,
Ooh, I love that. Thank you for sharing the profound wisdom and insight because that's going to help out a lot of people. So,
hope so.
um, yeah. One more question. Do you think that we could see you on the show again in the future? Because we've got a lot of stuff covered, and I feel like that there's even more stuff that people could get out of this conversation. But whenever we deal with time schedules, we kind of got to stick within an hour, and there's no way we can get all the good stuff in just 1 hour.
Yeah, I'd love to come back. Yeah, like I said, my second book is
Sweet.
coming out, so maybe we could talk about this chapter two. So
Yeah. The chapter
Yeah.
2, book 2. Is that how that works?
Chapter, I think so. Yeah.
All right.
There's three in the series, so we'll start with two and go to the third later.
All right. Well, Julie, it's been an absolute honor and a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for showing up for yourself and for all the women out there that are fighting a difficult battle with emotional, financial abuse, and just everything in between, because it's not easy advocating for yourself, and especially whenever no one else believes you, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um,
And people will
we'll see.
believe you. It's just going to take a battle. The truth always
Yeah.
comes out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Everything in the darkness comes to light eventually. So, with that being said, Julie, we'll see you on in the future. And everyone out there, thank you for listening to Retrieving Sanity on WDJY 99.1 FM. And as always, love yourself, love others if you can, but love yourself first, because it's difficult sometimes. And if you don't take care of yourself, you can't love others the way you need to. So, with that being said, y'all just have a great rest of your day, week, whenever it is that you may be listening to this. Check out retrievingsanity.com. Find us on YouTube, wherever, for this full episode, and check out juliebarthauthor.net or .com for her books, and help out some awesome fundraising.